here we go.
And here we go.
That's right, people. What's up? This is episode number 276, The Symphony of Destruction. And today we have a very special guest. We're very honored to have him live here on the Lone Gunman podcast. An old friend of mine, a new friend of Joe's, and noted author and proprietor of tpack.com. That stands for Two Princes and a King. Carmine Savastano comes back to the show. What's up, buddy?
Not much. How you guys doing? It's good to be back.
Yes, sir. You are looking freaking handsome, if I do say so myself. I was telling Carmine before we started, I was like, man, you look like my twin brother now. That's awesome. See, Joe, you need to start going gray a little bit and grow a big, nasty beard.
I thought you were going to say go bald. Or just shave my head. Not bald.
I'm bald because I'm going gray.
Okay.
I mean, I could have a pretty mean widow's peak going here with hair.
As you get older, too, it really, who cares? I just shave
it's
it
so much easier.
I mean, guys that are really trying to style and look, young when you're, it's whatever. You're middle aged. Shave your head.
Oh, Perry Russo over here. Yeah.
I'm
every night
for being late because I have to get ready.
I got to take a shower before we start. I was like, dude, nobody can smell you through the screen, But
more about the hair, Rob. More about the hair.
I know.
Hey, not to say as Zero Mostel said in the original producers, if you got it, flaunt it. But if you don't, look good. To look good, you want to keep it short.
Exactly. So Carmine, everybody here should know who the hell you are if they've been listening to the show for a long time. But for the newer viewers that we have here on YouTube, this is a whole new format for us and the Lone Gunman podcast. So please just introduce yourself to the viewers out there and let them know what you got going on.
Well, my name is Carmine Savastano. If you look at some of the posts, aka CAA Savastano, just to make it shorter for descriptions on some online pages. But I have been doing historical research and for over a decade, and have been involved in the JFK community a little bit, roughly about that amount of time. I have a background of in literature and history, and I've always been interested in intelligence and government operations. But once I became more involved in doing research and associating with historians and experts in certain fields like Larry Hancock and Cherry Feaster and John Newman and others, and Bill Simpich, Rex Bradford, being able to help contribute to the Mary Farrell Foundation's databases, and I've conducted some research, I think, over time. People are more than free to disagree, but that has perhaps helped push things forward as far as, for instance, some people might know the name Thomas Cassison, and Cassison is kind of an infamous name because he was the CIA official that discussed using Lee Harvey Oswald while he was in Minsk, which is something that was always denied by the Warren Commission, always denied by the agency. They would never use somebody like Oswald, which, allow me to tell you, after looking at hundreds of thousands of pages of their documents, they'd use much worse than Oswald and have used much worse than Oswald.
Oh, yeah.
Oswald was a 24-year-old misguided fool. They've used way worse than that. But I was able to actually locate this person and identify them as Jacques Richardson. And he's alive and I think well still in France.
Jacques.
And that's, that I was able to, I've done some presentations at JFK Lancer. One of the things I'm proud of is I was able to actually locate certain people on the day of to try to clear the table. Like, I think, as I and Rob have discussed in the past, a lot of people want to add to the story. They don't want to take away. I'm one of the, I'd say, few who wants to take away. I want to remove the myths out of our way. I want to take the bad leads and toss them aside and prove with evidence that they don't exist, so that we actually start to have a list of names we can deal with. Hi, how you doing?
Everybody saying hi.
And hopefully, once we're done, which we'll probably be passing the reins on eventually one day, Rob.
Oh no, we got some big dogs watching it, man. Doug Campbell's in the house. What's up, Doug?
Doug.
And our music producer Roger is in the house.
Hello, Roger. That's a great
Roger.
intro.
We got Mike. We got Claude, Johnny.
I like the
All
title
kinds.
too. Very good.
Yes.
You take a mortal man.
Hey, I try to come up with catchy titles for the shows.
Yeah.
I've always tried to do that, and that just popped in my brain. And I was like, "What's that song? I know it's Megadeth. I know it." And it finally popped in there. I was like, yeah, I did. Man, too much weed back in the day, but here we are.
but yeah. Just to sum up, yeah, I people can check out my work. My references will be in the notes, and Rob already told you about tpoc.com. But my whole contribution and what I want to do going forward, as I have in the past, is just help us get rid of some of the bad leads so that Joe and Rob and all the other people out there doing research are not having to waste their time looking into every new thing that someone presents or a recycled, rehashed old version of which we see as, Rob was telling me about earlier, new quote unquote documentaries that are released that just repeat 1980s, 1990s information.
That's very true, Carmine. And to your point, when I first, as you know, I started out as a listener, then started doing my own primary resources research. Say that 3 times fast. I was really impressed with like the straight up document, no BS, and I absolutely just took it from there and started doing my own research, and it was a great. And then we found some very interesting documents, some of which we're going to talk about today. Destruction of documents, maybe some Martin stuff, and
Yeah.
to my point, I almost lost my train of thought. I would have probably lost 10 years of JFK research reading certain people's books, but because of guests like you and Larry Hancock and Bill Simpich and other really serious researchers, it saved me probably 3 decades of wading through the BS.
Well, I'm happy to help, and I'm happy to see you join the community, because I mean that's my goal. I'm hoping to save people time, and then we get new informed people in the community, and over time, hopefully, more and more people become informed and don't have to waste time arguing over nonsense.
Like James Files
or Judy Baker or Tosh Plumley or
the list is long.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when we talked last week on the Ocelli effect, Chuck asked me about my thoughts about Plumley. I was like, honestly, I've never looked into him. It was also about Roselli, who obviously wasn't in Dallas, but like someone like Tosh Plumley, like I never wasted my time like searching a document of him because people I know and trust
have said it's horseshit.
Yeah, like
and
so
gave you a document to look at. Yeah, I mean, that to me is the real thing. Is that we can, I've listened to some of your past shows. You provide some documents. That's important. That really, to me, that there's a quality of research that is required if we're actually going to make some real progress. And I think we have. I think people didn't think much progress would happen after the 90s, 2000s, but some real big leaps have happened, and more releases, more possibilities.
Exactly. Thank you, Mike, for the super sticker. We appreciate it greatly, sir.
Thank you.
And
yes,
David, you
got
Shooters
in the Storm Drain. That's from the X-Files. Is, I believe, the first time I saw that.
Yeah, shooting from the limo behind, the driver turning and shooting. And Jackie. As well.
Yep. Oh yeah,
you gotta love it.
It's got to be thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of various myths exist, and That's why, we had Rob on before, hope to get him back, and had Joe on for the myth series, because I mean, we've knocked down hundreds of myths, and there's still so many more that
They're like
exist.
zombies rising out of the graveyard,
As soon as you knock them
every
down,
2 years.
Yeah.
God, they just won't die.
It gets clicks. That's the problem.
Yeah, clickbait. But you're not going to find clickbait here. We try to stick to the documents as much as possible here, people. So, Carmine, let's get right into what you found out about some destruction of documents.
Okay. So last year, I came across a document that verifies the largest yet documentary eradication by officials regarding the JFK case. Now, I say yet because there could be a still undiscovered larger one. But
Yes.
This one, anything's possible. It could be. This is in the tens to hundreds of thousands of files, this one.
That's a lot of paper.
It's pretty significant. Yeah. It's bigger than the CIA ones that have been discovered thus far, bigger than the FBI ones. Though, as we will learn from Joe later, not definitely the latest document destruction. It's still ongoing. But this, I would think, especially in the time period, is what I... Anyway, so... because I think what people need to remember is the document destruction happened before the HSCA. What the document I found basically was a response to the HSCA from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and it was a query. The DIA, for background, was created during the Kennedy administration by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara to administrate the collection of military intelligence and to retain it for the DoD. So in the document I mentioned, the HSC requested all their files pertaining to the Kennedy assassination held by the DIA. Its response stated the DIA, quote, had destroyed all of its files which might be related to the assassination and that therefore had nothing to offer. Now, even the response was classified under an NSA agreement with the HSCA. So the HSCA couldn't even tell people they had destroyed it. And I think it would have made them look like fools because they wouldn't have been able to access all that material. And they had so brazenly basically told them, as the British say, get stuffed.
Yes.
So,
among other things.
This notable response was given. So investigators were unable to find out why the destruction had occurred and discuss it publicly. As I said, this attack was unknown, and among it, within the millions of pages of the JFK collection. So we can now prove this occurred, and I delved further to find additional specifics that I cover in a series Rob's going to link in the notes. And I can state it wasn't until at least 1973 that military officials were obliterating evidence related to Lee Harvey Oswald, thus the JFK case. And they did so despite the historical importance of the material and their own filing requirements, which is interesting because I found out what those were. And they weren't supposed to destroy those files. Because there was derogatory information on Oswald, they were supposed to retain them. But as we know, so
yeah, it didn't quite happen.
Yeah. So,
hey, real quick, Carmine, there's a question, and it's a common question you do hear about these documents. It just jumped up. Why would the government create files that linked them to the assassination to begin with?
Well, I don't think that they would do it intentionally.
Right.
But if let's say, for instance, you have an operation going on, most likely a compartmentalized operation. Someone says something off kilter. Let's say a warrant officer in Indonesia says that he thinks Kennedy should get killed sometime. They don't want that to be put into the public files. So that would be something, basically any mention of derogatory things about the president, which there were many, is a possible suspect, is a theoretical link to military intelligence, is a theoretical link to the people in the chain of command. So,
Right.
and those are going to occur. You can't. The thing is they're not intentionally creating. I don't think that they would draw out their plans and then submit them into the record.
And then, doing an internal investigation,
Yeah.
They're asking questions. They're saying, "Hey, JOEB, what the hell you got going on down there? Do you know anything about this?" And they're tasked to look into things and report back. And so these documents get created, not necessarily linking them to the assassination, but they are assassination related documents. You know what I mean? They're not going to have documents that say, "Oh yeah, it was a couple of our guys."
And I think what more to what the audience member was saying, that if you look at, they didn't need to create those documents, because if you look at the Castro plots, or you look at the varying assassinations of foreign leaders that our intelligence community conducted and our military intelligence community conducted, they didn't need to write it all in and submit it to the record. Those plans right there can be overlaid at times with different events throughout history. I mean, and it's still happening today. I mean, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, they arrested 2 Hells Angels bikers who were linked to Iranian intelligence sent to the U.S. to kill dissidents. It's still going on. The exact same things the KGB was doing in the 60s is being done by other intelligence groups now.
Thanks, Trey.
So, but I think that's what would happen. And over time, it would just be so many documents. Every derogatory comment a military person made about Kennedy, which is, I would imagine, is quite a few. Every comment every officer ever made, anything anybody ever put to paper or heard or was reported by an FBI informant, all that stuff over time just builds up. You can't destroy it fast enough. That's the whole funny thing about the destruction, is that by doing it, they've only piqued our interest more and focused us on certain areas. Oh, and another thing I want to do, I have one more update, and I didn't get it. It didn't happen until the day after we were on the Ocelli effect last week. So I wanted to give the DIA a chance to respond. And somebody told me, somebody told me, good, now you got to file with them too. CIA, DIA, doing great.
Yeah, add it to the list.
So I sent in November of last year, by the way, because I thought it was fitting. I wrote a letter to the Inspector General's office of the Defense Intelligence Agency and asked them if it was their position that they destroyed all their JFK holdings, despite their own requirements, despite the historical importance of them. And I was given a quote response. I sent the letter certified mail because I wanted to obtain a signature to at least get an official.
I was going to ask that.
I wanted an official to sign for it so I could get a name. But the item
John
bears
Smith.
But it has no signature. They didn't even get me the signature they're supposed to that I paid for. But the letter sent bears a red stamp that it was screened and received by the Pentagon November 30th, 2023. So maybe about a week after I sent it. It got there. The Pentagon screened it. It was open. It was slit open, seemingly red, and then replaced and taped closed. Bad tape job. Like, I thought they could, this was you could have steamed it. I would have never known. there was a
they
lot
just don't care anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
God.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to eventually, when I do another, when I discuss the issue again in an article, I'm going to put
sender.
Well, what's funny is it has return to sender on the front, but that's the post office. But on the back here, I'm going to take a photo. Mike wants me to, when we talk about it again, this is the actual envelope. It has return to sender. That's the USPS. The interesting part is the red stamp. And it's dated November 30th, 23 at Pentagon, screened. And it's certainly been opened, marked with an X on the front,
Yeah, I could see the tape.
and sent back. So they got my letter. I sent it. I can prove I sent it.
Well,
And-
props for actually having the cojones to send a letter to the Inspector General of the DIA, because that is bold, sir, and I respect that a lot. As
I appreciate it. Yeah, I would have brought it
someone
up.
who tries to
like
do
I said,
things too.
I didn't get it back until after the show. Otherwise, I would have definitely mentioned it on the show. But so you guys got the scoop on that one. Yeah, I honestly didn't think I'd get it back at all. I thought that they would just, shred it and say they never got it.
Screw this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go, folks. Breaking news on the Lone Gunman podcast.
So we've asked them, and they've given their response.
Yeah. Go screw.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, they know. I mean, what are they really going to? Really, all they could have wrote was like one letter, yes. Just yes.
Yes. That is our position.
But they don't want to because, that's a very indefensible position to be in.
Yeah. They're not being held accountable for that law in any way, shape, or form. So it matters very little to them.
But yeah, they can't say they weren't given a chance. I gave them every opportunity to clarify if they wanted to.
Scott said, "Get DNA from the tape job."
Nice.
Fingerprints, maybe.
Yeah.
It sticks to adhesive.
We'll find out who handled that damn thing if it kills us.
Well, I would hope at least, if not the Inspector General, his secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least. At the very
I would
least.
hope it got to the office. And at least somebody. And it obviously was read. Otherwise, why would you tape job it back up and slit the whole thing open?
Or the guy that gets coffee and donuts. I mean, somebody.
Yeah. Somebody read it.
Did you explain any of your like credentials or author and
Oh, okay, yeah.
historian?
I've written
Not
2
that
books.
that matters, but
Yeah.
No, in the letter to the DIA, I think he's saying.
Oh, yeah. No. I offered who I was, and I just had questions about the historical research. I said this is for historical research, and I find it so. It's annoying but hilarious that they still care. That I mean, at this point, everyone who could possibly have been prosecuted is probably gone, most likely,
or dead.
And no one that is in a position of power today likely had anything to do with it. So they have, there might be a couple, but for the most part, they're all too young. So they really have no vested interest in keeping it. I think.
What is this guy talking about?
I think at this point they just are content to let the public think whatever they want to think and not answer, because I would contend they probably don't know. I think that's what scares some officials is they don't know either. They that maybe we'll never know. And even with all
they destroyed the document about destroying the document.
Be. Yeah. Think about that. That in their document destruction, they might have actually, destroyed their own chances of finding out who did it.
Yeah. There's your rabbit hole. Alice's mirror.
So yeah. No, I think that kind of that was certainly something of interest that I came across last year, and then. I also just wanted to quickly add before you guys just wanted to go into the Martin stuff. I also have a series that I threw in for the notes that talks about defectors and moles and basically the Central Intelligence Agency and the inner workings of the CIA, a portion of the CIA during the 50s and 60s, moving into the 70s, about a mole hunt that actually spread to 5 countries and was fairly extensive, all based largely upon the claims of one Russian defector, one KGB defector named Anatoly Golitsyn. Well, Popov was the first one, yeah. Popov was the original defector that talked about Russia using desinformatia, they called it, disinformation campaigns. So,
but he was actually a double agent too, as well.
Yeah,
and was later killed.
Indeed. Yeah, well, there was a few of them too, and the unfortunate thing is that the famous phrase that you'll see used a lot in the JFK case in intelligence is Angleton said there. James Angleton, who was the counterintelligence chief of the CIA from the 50s until the 70s, said wilderness of mirrors. And this wilderness of mirrors is in some ways an apt statement, because in the JFK case, in larger intelligence and counterintelligence, there's a lot of unknowns. In my series, I call it the intelligence abyss, is what I look at it as. And that abyss is all the unknowns that surround all of these things. And there's sometimes more unknowns than known quantities in various circumstances. So
because a lot of it wasn't even put down on paper back then,
Yeah.
They were specifically told, like Harvey was specifically tell his people, do not put anything on paper.
Even though he made the QJ win lists,
right,
assassination list notes that later came out and exposed the rifle and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
whatever happened to that internal JOEB report after the assassination, right? Like,
thank you, Mr. Spinks.
Destruction of files, right? That.
Oh yeah, or just when the one of the things that I talk about in that series, and I think that most people don't know about the way the CIA conducted this investigation. In the beginning, not everyone, of course, but some of the CIA leadership did, to if only exonerate themselves, wanted to cooperate with the commission, wanted to delve into this, and just, if it was one of the people, they were going to axe any connection with them and then expose them, burn them, just to get rid of them. So they wanted to work with the commission, and they put John Whitten in charge of the investigation originally. Unfortunately, Angleton and CI-SIG took it from him. And because they were so obsessed with moles and trying to find out if there were traitors in their ranks, they didn't do the sort of investigation required. That compromised the CIA's investigation. And it's not to say that they didn't want certain things hidden. Certainly they did. But there's a lot of, like you said before, Joe, there's a lot of competing factions in these groups. So it's not just as if they're, one whole entity acting together. This is a lot of different people with a lot of politics and a lot of power bases and
compartmentalization,
struggles over, turf struggles, and, people hating each other. So that doesn't make for a, good group to conduct an assassination. You have to have just
or a cohesive
people.
Narrative of an agency's intelligence operations. So,
well, and I think that's the big thing about what I try to point out in the series is, and I think has been overlooked by some of the people who've looked into it before, is that it doesn't require a mole to do all the damage of one. Just that Anatoly Galatzin claimed there was a mole set into motion so many things, sidelined over 50 careers, hundreds of agents suspect. And Angleton was already overly paranoid because he had been betrayed by his friend Kim Philby, who turned out to be one of the Cambridge Five. So it was ripe. It couldn't have been, the Russians couldn't have picked a better person than Galatzin to come over here at that time. Which makes me think, some people want to say that either Galatzin was the plant or Nosenko was the plant, or that, both are guilty or both are innocent. I think both can be legitimate defectors and still be wrong and still have lied. Because if you look, defectors lie. That's just part of the process. They want to make themselves more impressive than they actually are, so that we'll give them more money, we'll relocate them to better lodgings, we'll take care of their families. And if we're not impressed by them, why do we have any reason to retain them?
Yeah, we'll just keep them at a black site for 6 months. Torture
almost
the hell out
4
of them.
years.
It's all in the game. They all lie.
Yeah, total. Yeah, with all that, between the Camp Peary and other places that kept Nosenko, almost 4 years.
Wow.
And it was all based on Galatzin. I mean, the CIA, if you look in the files, they actually made his tests fail. Like, he took polygraph tests and passed, but they told him he failed every time, no matter what, because they wanted to break him, because he had to be, a fake defector, according to them. And, like we talked about a little bit off the air, a lot of people have claimed that they have the answer, but unless it's clearly shown in the evidence, and I mean, something indicative of their betrayal, some communication with a Russian operative, some informant that saw them with the Russians or whatever Soviet entity they're dealing with.
Yeah, something tangible.
Yeah, it's got to be tangible if you want to say that you have answered the question, no matter what it is, whether it's a JFK case or anything else.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Joe, you want to go into what we found with what the FBI was doing in the 90s?
Sure. Well, I'll give a little backstory to this. And essentially, as many of our listeners, if not all, by now know,
We're sick of hearing the name, but we're going to bring it up again.
Well, that's kind of the point, Rob. It keeps coming up, and that's why we presented on it.
Yeah.
And one of the Martins we came up with was a lady named Joan Martin, which is very interesting. And she was part of the JFK task force, which was responsible for destructing some of the files. And this is a memo in 1998. And, we have a few other corresponding documents. But, yeah, I mean, based on the 1992 JFK Records Act, in 1998, they still have a task force.
Destroying documents.
Who knows how many people, how much money was spent on this task force as, the JFK movie, garnered more interest in the case, right? So they go directly into CYA mode and they say, we have to destroy more. And it's very, very interesting. What do you think about this, Carmine?
Yeah, I'm looking it over.
There's very little on Joan Martin.
I'm wondering the dates.
8498.
Oh no! I mean the dates of the destruction lists.
Oh, that's not.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. That's what, like as I said, with the DIA stuff, I'm trying to locate more information on. It's just bits and pieces.
If we actually had the copy of the destruction log, which it might be the other document Joe's got.
Yep, I'll show next.
I'm wondering what volume 19 is.
Yeah, right.
Because volume 19 was never destroyed, and for some reason, it has certain.
Well, it says forward copies of destruction lists regarding references to Jack Leon Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this meant them together or separately.
Probably. Yeah, I would imagine separate files.
Yeah.
So both Ruby's file and Oswald's file, and then
room 11144 JFK Task Force could be some interesting things to look up individually to find more context on what exactly this task force was doing and when those dates of destruction actually happened. But like you said before, they probably got rid of the destruction and
destroyed. Joe
destroyed the destruction instructions. There we go.
Yeah. Well, no, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went on, like I said, beyond 73, especially if they've got a record 98. Then I'm thinking it would probably be after that. I could see them still destroying things even after the HSCA, despite the agreements that were made.
Well, I have a question for you, Carmine. Do you see a pattern of documents being destroyed, say, pre-Garrison, pre-HSCA, pre-Church Committee,
Well, we know the Secret Service destroyed their documents, right, Carmine?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I certainly think the timing.
The question is when did he do it?
Yeah, the timing is far beyond coincidence, because when you look at, as we're talking about, Hoover's files get destroyed. And that was my original article when I was talking about this, is I was linking the destructions that had occurred prior, because everybody always talked about, what was destroyed with Hoover's files, thinking that it was, a a truckload, or it was, just the files that were in Gandy's office. But no, it turned out to be multiple truckloads of dozens of file cabinets filled with hundreds of files each, plus cars bringing, extra files to be destroyed, incinerated, plus files at different FBI offices, including the Washington, D.C. office, the field office, that were being incinerated. It was a lot of files. It was about tens of thousands, I'd say. And then
I would have loved to seen that dude's basement. Oh my God.
And then as Rob mentioned, after and during the commission, the Secret Service is destroying files, the CIA is destroying files, the FBI is destroying files in smaller numbers, but perhaps in more critical areas, as where the CIA, but we also too have to account for government ignorance, and we have to account for that the common occurrence. There were actually standards for, like, Mexico City is a good one. The Mexico City tapes and Mexico City transcript. Well, some of the transcripts survived, but the tapes never survived, and the photos never survived. But the reasoning for the tapes is they did replace. Basically, they're being cheap. The CIA. Were cheap as far as their surveillance operation, so they didn't always buy new tapes, and sometimes they would tape over old ones. Same thing, and I'm not saying that explains all the holes in the record that they've created. I'm just saying that we have to at least allow that can happen, and that might explain some of them. But it doesn't explain the specific Oswald ones.
Yes.
It doesn't explain why Ambassador Mann and other people let the FBI heard the Oswald tapes, but the public and none of the congressional investigators ever heard them. That they somehow.
But didn't Hoover say he heard him too when he was talking to LBJ?
Yeah, so those tapes were in the hands of the FBI and the CIA, and those tapes were vanished.
Yeah.
No matter what that's just
probably because it wasn't Oswald on the tape. Might be my guess.
Most likely. That's what I would also guess, is because it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Well, Gruber has identified the guy, thankfully, outside of the Mexico embassy picture, as one of Mac Wallace's former football players.
Nice. Actually, what's his name? Because
he was beaten to it by Richard Hook on that identification. And, Ralph Sinkay. But if that's who you're looking to for research, people, I got some bad news for you.
Yes,
because I saw a Mac Wallace comment in this thread earlier about his fingerprint, and I'm telling you right now, sir,
don't waste your time on it.
Yeah, don't waste your time on it. Go read Joan Mellon's book. What was it? What was that? The Faustian Bargain.
Faustian Bargain. Yep.
Yep, and you will find that the Mac Wallace fingerprint is a giant myth.
Yep. Founded on an unfortunate, identification using bad resources.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the Reiner Reiner series that we covered on JFK Myth, where just a lot of bad sources, Nagel and Fabian Escalante and
and that's what we're talking about. These things pop up that are bad information, but then the good information never gets heard by the people that need to hear it. Mm-hmm. So, this Mac Wallace myth just persists and persists and persists while, actually somebody, actually debunked the Mac Wallace fingerprint. You just may have never heard about it, but it is in Joan Mellon's book, in the appendix, in the book Faustian Bargain. Mm-hmm. And she wrote a book about LBJ, about how evil he was. It would have behooved her for that to be Mac Wallace's fingerprint.
Very true.
And she got a first generation copy of directly from his military file. So it wasn't like the Xeroxed one that was used in the supposed identification of Wallace. So yeah, I just agree with what you're saying. She used the right resources. She used the right means, primary evidence. She looked it over. She had a fingerprint analysis person who taught other fingerprint analysis people look at it.
Yeah, who was actually licensed at the time that they looked at the fingerprint.
Unlike the person who made the Mac Wallace one.
Yeah, the guy that said it was Mac Wallace's fingerprint was like 90 some years old, not licensed at the time.
using Xerox.
Yeah, and a magnifying
Xerox.
glass.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Okay.
But I digress.
All right.
Well, and yeah, if it were 1964, maybe he would have had a little more to stand on. But
Right.
we have the technology, we have the resources now to be able to check, and that hopefully is what will put to bed some of these, like all of us talking about it, and finally move it out of the way so we can get to some real names and real possibilities.
Right.
Because if we keep, if people keep rehashing the same old nonsense. Sorry, guys, we're going to keep going. We have to keep going. We have to keep knocking them down and, finding new stuff.
You're killing me, Scott. You see that vein? It's starting to throb.
He's sarcastic. He's being
I know. Everybody is Mr. X.
I thought Fletcher Prouty was Mr. X.
I thought Richard Case Nagel was Mr. X.
Anyone could be. You're Mr. X, Rob.
I might be. I had Mr. X on my show.
Yeah,
I remember.
Hi, Corey.
So let me get back to the next Joan Martin document I found regarding some destroying of documents that I thought would be relevant to something that to what Carmine was talking about. This is the next one. This is attention Joan Martin on the top right of the page. This is also on the JFK task force. It would be interesting to synopsis. Miami's requested to forward the documents listed below to the JFK task force as soon as possible due to an extremely short deadline. Of what?
Hurry up. We got documents to destroy here. Jam wave.
Slip up. Yeah, 6 years after
you might actually I'm sorry, I was just gonna mention you might actually still find some of the Richardson documents in there, because I found some of those later on after I had found out who he was. They still were trying to protect his name.
Oh, yeah.
Like into the 90s, they were still trying to protect his name because they were still probably operationally using him. I saw that he worked for the United Nations afterwards. So chances are he was one of their guys on the United Nations.
Yeah. And one thing I want to read from this is the JFK Records Act defines how the FBI may now postpone certain information, but the originals are still sent to NARA to be maintained until the year 2017, which we had some good releases, but not significant ones, but not all of them like was supposed to be. And it's just very interesting that this lady, Joan Martin, is involved in this. And she's also involved. This is one of another files that we found. That, again, very hard to find anything on her. She is negotiated, aka Carmine said was kind of like a redaction of sorts, and you can expand on that to Joseph Molina, and I believe
I would call it more of a suggestion to destroy.
Yes, yeah, they didn't. Right.
Well, it could be, like I was saying, it could be a consolidation. It could be because they had to make some sort of deal to keep those records held, or maybe to destroy them. That could be it as well.
And you can see, folks, we're talking about Orlando Bosch, Sam Giancana, Joseph Molina, the entire Jure organization. I don't know who Richard Frank and Ed Moss are, but
I believe those were reviewed and or negotiated / destroyed by Jim Puglisi. So Joan Martin was responsible for the people on the right side, I think, is what I was able to. And I have 2 or 3 pages of this document. We will post it on our locals page, and along with some of the other documents we've shown here. And you can kind of make your own decision. But Joan Martin was part of the JFK task force, and I think she was high enough as to where she was CC'd and forwarded and attentioned on a few significant documents regarding destroying of documents in 1997, 1998. So we have extended your timeline, but we have one more surprise. We looked into Joan Martin, and we think we found her. I'm skipping to the third sentence. She was married to Big Bob. Joan and Bob did everything together.
Yes.
So, Rob,
Damn it, you found my ex-wife.
Do you have anything to say for yourself here?
Yeah. God rest her soul. Her and I found this, right? And I was like, she was married to Big Bob. I was like, what in the Sam Hill is going on around here? I just thought it was funny.
Big Bob.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It is funny. And that is just a couple of the weird things we had on Joan Martin that we kind of tangentially found while looking for Martins that were involved in the JFK case, and we were very surprised that one popped up so late, that they were possibly still using this potential alias.
I just wanted to add, I totally agree with the first document with the destruction. The second two could relate to it, but I think the second one also might be like we said, it depends on who's phrasing what negotiated means and but that also could be that they negotiated that certain files wouldn't be released.
Right. I think you might be onto something there.
Yeah, the first one I think was definitely destruction and destruction lists that they had. Also, they might have been trying to find out. I mean, imagine being internally in the government trying to find out what was destroyed. Like if you just sent out like a query to all the different departments and they're like, hey, did anybody destroy anything?
Yeah.
And then it just starts coming back that millions, hundreds of thousands of pages had been destroyed.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. And you have to keep in mind a lot of these people that might have destroyed things in the 60s or 70s weren't around in the 90s to destroy things. So they might have not, like to your point earlier, they might not have been aware of certain earlier destructions, right? Mm-hmm. That goes back to compartmentalization, which I'm almost certain the assassination was carried out in a compartmentalized way. That's how ops like that were carried out.
And like we talked about with the turf wars and the interagency fighting, that's still going on. That's why they had to create the Department of Homeland Security to try to unify all the different organizations that were still never learned from the 60s and 70s and the Cold War, that not acting together would always create problems. So that too, I mean, that, until 2023, we didn't know the DIA deep $6 files. And until you just showed us that, we didn't know they were still destroying files. So, who knows that what is still undiscovered. But just with what we have discovered, that's why I think with the DIA specifically, it's important because they only destroyed all of their JFK files. If there was nothing in those files that were incriminating or would have been of use to the investigators, what other purpose would you have?
Embarrassment.
There you go. There had to be something. And like I said, it could have been something as benign as a couple of troopers saying that they wish they could take a shot at Kennedy.
Yeah.
To actually somebody making a Harvey mistake.
Yeah.
And writing down, 2 assassins, 2 handlers, JFK on the same piece of paper. I mean, it could be, from one extreme to the other, but it certainly was something worth destroying. And the effort it would take to destroy that many documents is no small feat. You have to get groups of people together that have to assess all of your file holdings, anything with mention of JFK, and purge it. And that's a long process.
It is.
And characters related to the JFK, right? So someone like
anything
someone
JFK
very not connected at all to JFK who could provide some clues for context. You also have to dig into them and make sure you get rid of some of their files.
And the DIA is the storehouse for all the departments of the military. And then the DOD is who I find destroying Lee Harvey Oswald's file in 73 in the second article. So it moves up. The destruction began in the military. The DIA then destroys all of its conglomerate files. Then the DOD starts purging specific JFK files.
Well, wasn't there a fire too, Carmine, like in the early 70s somewhere?
Yeah, I believe I call it a happy coincidence in the article.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
It just so happens after the Lee Harvey Oswald file was destroyed and the Army was going through trying to destroy all of its files on certain things, they had a fire at an Army, base where the holding center was destroyed and 16 million files went up.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened on 9/11.
I believe, let me double check. It might have been 1.6, but it was in the millions.
Wow. That is still, if you were to like put that in, like stack that up, that would be like a building.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that Building 7, right, World Trade Center, was housing all kinds of documents for government agencies as well. I mean, that's what it was full of.
Sorry, I was being conservative. 16.5 million.
Ooh.
Jesus Christ, that's so many.
And it wiped, not just the because the JFK things were the JFK destructions were separate. This was just everything about various Army figures. They talked about decades of files being lost in that fire.
Oh, yeah.
So just gone.
Poof.
Yep.
Wow.
And it just so happens it happened after the Watergate Committee was founded and the congressional investigations were beginning that would lead to the Church Committee and other formations the next year. Yeah. And people were asking questions and the press was getting involved and there was a fire.
And timing is everything.
You have to think that documents like MK Ultra related, Phoenix, Operation Phoenix related. It doesn't only have to deal with JFK and
any of the military.
It was only by mistake that we
tons of military operations between the CIA and between other branches of the military.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, all vanished.
I think that's our last hope, to be honest, is that some idiot somewhere misfiled something.
And we
not that I think there's a smoking gun document, but something significant enough for us
human error.
Or Malcolm Blunt Xeroxed it before they destroyed it.
Nice. Well, it was there you go. But it's I think that, and he's a great guy, by the way. I met Malcolm Blunt. He's a great Englishman, one of my favorites, as I've told Ellen Dale before. But human error is what we have to rely on. Human error is what gave me that DIA document. That should have never been allowed into the files. They should have destroyed. And it's hilarious because it's like how other larger programs were found on just a little communication that really had not much to do with it, that was just sort of stacked in amongst. Because sometimes they misfile against themselves. They
or forget to redact things. You know, it's like
Or redact them separately. That's my favorite.
Right.
When versions come out, but if you put them together, you can actually get the whole document because one is redacted in the beginning and one in the end.
Hey, Carmine, you want to take this question from Paula? Go ahead.
So the first problem with the Clint Murchison story is Clint Murchison did not own the ranch the day that this party was supposed to have taken place. He owned it earlier in the year, or the year before, I believe. So that's a problem. Another issue is a lot of the figures that are supposed to be there change. If you look at the varying versions of the Clint Murchison story, sometimes you have Hoover, sometimes you have Dulles, sometimes you have all sorts of famous people who would never have
Nixon, who actually flew back to Washington. And it's confirmed. Yeah.
Who would never have been present. If you are a conspirator with a brain in your head, you are a lone conspirator. You do not have a big party where you blatantly talk about. How much more Bond villain can you be than to have a big party to talk with all your minions about what you're going to do?
And you don't tell your mistress that you don't have to worry about the Kennedys after tomorrow.
And if you look at her story, Madeline Brown, too, unfortunately, it changes over time as well. So she was trying to cash in. I believe she had a sick child. I understand why a lot of the myth makers do what they do, but they're still myths. I mean, no matter how dramatic or heartwarming the story may be, or Judy and her romance tales, it doesn't, various myths that crop up around this case might be, pull on your heartstrings, but that doesn't make them true.
Yeah. And according to the Secret Service, LBJ was in his hotel room by 11 p.m. that night.
And once again, Johnson, like I've talked about elsewhere, Johnson is not a mastermind. I'm sorry. He's a, great bully. He's a villain.
And making other people do his work for him.
Yeah. He is a perfect manipulator, and was a politician, certainly. But he's not a mastermind. He doesn't have military tactics at his disposal. He doesn't have people that would want to, at the time that he comes into office. I mean, first of all, he comes in the shadow of JFK's death. That's the first problem. And when people like to say it was Johnson, as Rob said, he wasn't, there for this party. But Johnson, in the days following Kennedy's assassination, there's documents that show him having private conversations with J. Edgar Hoover, where he asks if one of the bullets was meant for him. If you set up that assassination, you don't have to ask that question.
Yeah.
Right.
Didn't he order the shutters closed on Air Force One when he got on because he was afraid of snipers?
Oh, yeah.
Or is that a myth? I'm not sure.
I've heard that said. I just know certainly that he feared for his security after JFK.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't? I mean, you're stepping into the shoes of a guy who was publicly executed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, if you go back in the LBJ library, you can listen to a lot of his personal phone calls, that were made at the White House. And everybody always says, oh, he wanted to be president, right? Well, if you listen to some of his conversations with his friends after he becomes president and gets a taste of what being a president actually entails and all the pressure and stress and everything else that comes along with it, he confided into his friends that he didn't want to do it anymore. That's, he didn't want to seek a second term, and he was seeking advice. What should I do? I don't know what to do. I'm in over my head type thing. So he wasn't a mastermind of anything.
And I can't remember.
Except taking dumps.
I can't remember if it was NBC or what network put it out, but there was a special in the 70s that was about the JFK case where they interviewed Johnson, and he asked that it not be released, his comments that were, of course, later released, the transcripts were. But when they asked him if there was a conspiracy, he believed there was one. And if you're a conspirator, you'd never admit that. You'd always cleave to the government claims that there wasn't.
Yeah, he'd be like, oh, no, Lee Harvey Oswald did it. What are you talking about?
So, yeah, there's even Johnson. I mean, there's just so many reasons why I think Lyndon Johnson is associated. One, he's the vice president. Who stands to gain? That's always the argument made. Who stands to gain? Well, you know what? Probably a lot of the investors in Vietnam stood to gain more than Lyndon Johnson. In the end, Lyndon Johnson ends up becoming basically a puppet for the Vietnam War effort.
Yeah. And he did not go along with the which is what I personally believe was the goal of the plotters, which was to prompt an invasion of Cuba. That's just my personal working theory. He did not go along with that. He actually was very concerned about nuclear war breaking out because of this.
Yeah.
And
he was also very concerned about his image, very egocentric. So Johnson, were Johnson to have undertaken such a thing, there's no way he would have gotten, it's like when discussing the Reiner thing. With Reiner, there's at least 11 to 12 people minimum in the plot that he proposes. That's just too many, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
You don't need that many people. And Johnson wouldn't have needed it, because now imagine this. So if Johnson, let's go along with it for a second. Let's give the Murchison theory what it was. Okay. So he told a room of a dozen or more people what he's doing. So that's a dozen people that know, plus the assassins, plus the handlers, plus any other go-betweens that are necessary to make this thing work. So how many people are we talking about here? How big of a plot do you think could have been made without somebody going to someone and telling them about it?
Yeah,
it's a good point. And thank you for the question, Paula. We love busting myths around here. We'd be happy to to do it. And that's one of the bigger ones that pervades out there. That that people think Lyndon Johnson's the mastermind. There's books written about it. There's movies, papers, presentations, you name it.
YouTube University episodes by Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands
Another.
of views.
I was
Yeah.
also going to say, not only people who stood, because they always say, who stands to gain, not only the supporters of the Vietnam War, but how about Richard Nixon? I don't think Nixon was responsible, but Richard Nixon was the one who wins by the charismatic Kennedy dying and by an easily defeatable Johnson being the person that he would have had to face.
Right.
If you want to go and postulate about who actually benefits.
Yeah. And from what I could tell, from what I've listened from Nixon interviews, he respected Kennedy as
Opponent.
As an admirable opponent. He wasn't.
That wasn't Nixon's way. Nixon publicly liked to destroy people. I don't think Nixon was an assassination. I mean, not to say that he wasn't allowing people, in my opinion, war criminals like he just died recently. Everybody honored him. Like Kissinger.
Oh yeah.
He was allowing Kissinger to wholesale destroy parts of Asia and bomb Cambodia, and increase the Vietnam War, certainly.
And that was okay, because like what's Joe's point earlier, look, it wasn't just Kennedy, it wasn't just LBJ. Nobody wanted to start a war at our front doorstep, 60 miles off our shore, and poke the Russian bear in the process. But it's okay. You want to go have a war over there?
Proxy
we can't
war.
see you, and the Americans can't see what you're doing, and we'll send our troops over there, way over there, where nothing could possibly get to us. That's fine. That's one thing, but no president would want to start a war with Cuba or Mexico or Canada. I mean, that's insanity. Colonel Reb, man, you freaking rock. And thank you, Scott, from earlier as well. Much appreciated, boys.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it's just,
Man.
I think when people talk about who benefits, they just have to look deeper into that question beyond LBJ. LBJ is the easy answer. LBJ is it's like if something were to happen now, would people automatically, if Biden were to be assassinated, would people automatically suspect Kamala? Yeah, some people would, but chances are probably not her. Because she'd be the first person people would suspect.
Yeah, I mean, that's
doing it
a good point.
In your home state. Doing it in your home state, too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that's why.
With all your cronies around.
It's the locational thing. I think that makes it so strong for people. They want to believe. Is that, it happened in Texas. Johnson didn't control Dallas. He controlled the outlying areas. He wasn't.
But Carmine, he was going to go to jail.
Well, once again, if they can show me the charging documents for where he was going to jail, I'll be more than happy to believe that. But until you can, no, he wasn't.
Yeah. Or
he murdered 7 people.
That I don't doubt. I just don't think he killed JFK.
Right.
Was it the Life or Time article that was supposed to come out before JFK got killed? But then after he got killed, that story was axed. Something with Billy Celestes or something, and then he got off.
Yeah,
people forgot about it, or like that. Is that type of myth?
Well, but Billy Celestes. I think a lot of the Bar McClellan stuff, from what I've heard. I mean, I was not there. I've just talked to different researchers and different sources on it. McClellan was a member of the law firm, but he was a minor figure. He didn't really have access to all Johnson's private files like he said he did. So I'm not really convinced, unless someone can show me that McClellan was personally handling Johnson's affairs, that he even had access to the things that he claimed.
Right.
And why, once again, would they write it? No conspirator is going to write, I killed JFK, FYI, I killed JFK. That's just not going to be, we're never going to find that file. And if we do, it's been planted. Because I'm sorry to say, I just don't think it's going to, I think it's going to be as we've had to do before. Piecemeal work, but eventually some of the pictures start to emerge, like with the things you guys have found with the Martins, You know, the
Yeah.
things I found at the DIA and the stuff we're going to continue to find, and those, you know, all other researchers that are out there, a lot of great people still looking. And now, shockingly, I think somehow it seems to me like there's more interest now. Like
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I remember when I first started getting involved, I'd say about, 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, it was on the wane, and it continued to wane for a while, and then the 60th really reinvigorated everything, and there's just a ton of new people that are interested, and I'm glad there's people like Joe that are, people that are using quality resources and saving other people time. It's really going to be about us saving each other time. And in that time savings, someone is going to hit something that will hopefully connect more of the dots.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Carmine. I appreciate that. And you actually did a perfect segue for, I think, what we should talk about next, which is some of the documents Rob and I were able to find while going through our Martin journey. And as I explained on the Ocelli effect last week, we started off with the anomaly of all these Martins, but it kind of evolved into a really deep dive, detailed study of a few of them, right? John T. Martin of Minnesota, James Herbert Martin, a few others. And James Herbert Martin has drawn the most interest. Before I was on with you guys, I was actually zooming with Mr. Larry H. We zoomed yesterday as well. I am, to your point, Carmine, helping him with a little part of the aftermath timeline of Marina and when she was interviewed. And it's the things we found on James Herbert Martin perplexing.
Mind-blowing, because this is the guy that I would have probably said, just looking at a list of J. Martins beforehand, that I would think this is going to be a dud. There's nothing here. Who cares about this guy? And then you start tripping over these documents, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute here.
What's going on here?
What in the hell is going on here?
I think and I know Joe's going to go into it, but I think from some of the things that Joe told me, it shows you that way back when, I and Rob talked about it a little bit, but just that net around Oswald and his wife that was formed by people with connections to various official groups. There were people, of course, jockeying for position. They wanted to use her name to their benefit. They wanted to use the sympathy that she was generating to their benefit. But there were also people pre-assassination that had been monitoring them, like, Ruth Hosty. We have the CIA.
Ruth Payne.
Yeah, Ruth Payne.
The Morning Shield.
We have informants all reporting back from various agencies. And it continues after he's dead, what's crazy is this is, from some of the like the one I sent you, I didn't know if you guys had seen that one because I know there's a ton of them, but I sent one to Rob that talks about some monitoring officials were doing during her commission testimony.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, it's February. He hasn't been, you guys will go into it, but what she's doing less than 3 months after the death of her husband.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I think there might have been some ulterior motives for her marrying Oswald.
Something. I was surprised to find out about her and Hugh Ainsworth. So, it's, Yep.
That's how supposedly he got the copy of the diary.
Right. Unbelievable. But yeah, so you figure, like you said, pre-assassination, you have the FBI sniffing around Marina. I think they were more worried about her than Oswald, just from her being Russian, them suspecting her of being a spy, of course, coming back over here with him. And then after the I guess during the assassination, while, Lee is, after he's in custody, but still alive, the DPD kind of steps in to the picture. And then after Oswald's killed, you have the Secret Service coming into the picture and whisking her away and secluding her and her family out at Six Flags. And then this guy, James Herbert Martin, takes custody of Marina, basically. So you kind of ask yourself, okay, well, you have all these government agencies, the FBI, the CIA, Secret Service, and they all want to know more and watch Marina closely. But Marina doesn't trust the FBI. Short of moving Secret Service people into a citizen's home,
Yeah,
what
she
else can you
dismisses
do?
them, like just
Yeah.
I'm sure she did other times, but in the document that I sent to Rob, she dismisses the Secret Service.
Yeah, and they're all tailing her and surveilling her. They're watching what she's doing. They're following her around. And the big key is, what is she saying to this guy, and what is she doing in this guy's house with this guy's family? Which brings us to the a direct line installation to White House communications being installed in the Martin's house. And this is like handwritten on a DPD intelligence document that we came across. And there's little intricacies in that might be able to tell us more about why exactly that happened like that. Our guess is probably to keep tabs on Marina, being able to get in touch with this guy whenever they wanted to, him being able to get in touch with them if he found something out.
Yep.
Could be I just wanted to interject. It could be
Yeah.
the Secret Service wanting a direct line to the White House.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We'll let her come live with you, but we're going to do this type thing,
Exactly, Rob.
Well, that's SOP for like CIA and FBI. They bug everything, and if they can install lines, especially communication lines. I mean, I'm sure they're already bugging the house.
They were bugging the house.
Yeah, I'm sure they're already bugging the house.
The FBI was bugging the house, and the Secret Service had this line installed, directly to White House communications. And it's like, wow.
I don't.
Yeah. If you think about the timeline, I'm sorry, Carmine. If you think about the timeline and Marina moving it to James Herbert Martin's house on November 29th, and the direct line being installed on December 3rd, to Rob's point, and actually Larry and I talked about this, there was almost certainly, let's assume he was involved with no one, right? He was the greatest opportunist ever, right? There would have been a condition like, okay, but if anything comes up national security wise, you better effing pick up this phone type thing, right? And I think that's kind of where the logic is taking me right now, but I think there had to be some type of deal made before, and obviously we know from the Die Circuit document we found, which was, by the way, guys, new releases, they might be negotiated, let's say, but there's still good things to be found, because we found that James Herbert Martin's wife was on the oral contract to the CIA. And
on the CIA payroll.
Yeah, was it the personnel division, Rob? S13?
Well, they were hiring her to be a wire intercept.
Yeah, well, I think it was an extension of an oral contract, and that was in June of '64. So
right.
So the CIA has a wire intercept operator living in the house where they installed a direct line to the White House.
Yes.
I think
we believe so. Listen, anything in this case you can not prove 100%, but from what we found document wise, sorry, that's what it points to. Well, for sure.
Well, and that those two things make sense together if you consider those two things, that she would be able to send messages coded, and having that line could be complementary, and she wouldn't be the first. Like I and Rob referred to earlier, you've got Ruth Payne, whose sister Sylvia Hyde-Hoke works for the CIA. You've got
it certainly helps too. Yeah. If she knows Russian.
Yeah.
If she's monitoring wire intercepts coming out of Russia, and she knows Russian, that would certainly help a lot, in the house.
Oh yeah, certainly, yeah. And you have people like, Declan Ford and others, all who have associations, varying figures all around Morena or Lee at some time or another. Like you said, de Mohrenschildt and Carlos Bernier. And I mean, it's almost an endless list if you really want to go into it. But another person, some of the people that aren't very commonly said that I came across years ago, for instance, the associate embassy officer, not Richard Schneider, but what was his name?
McVicker?
John McVicker, yeah. So McVicker, I found out that Schneider's contract actually, remember how they say that, well, Schneider was only a contract agent for 41. Actually, his contract was renewed later on in the 50s. But they don't they don't mention that year that he came back to the agency, did a little work for them right before he was in the embassy.
I give zero credence to operational years employed by the CIA.
Especially when working in the embassy.
Yeah, there's a common saying, once CIA, always CIA.
Well, but I just love it when you can find an operational document that verifies. So it's not, they can say they were cut off and they didn't work for them anymore. Mm-hmm. But there was this kind of like, what's his name? The Jefferson Morley found the documents on Joanides. They failed to mention that he wasn't just a document reviewer in 78. He also was helping with the exile operations during the 60s.
Running the DRE.
Yeah, running the DRE.
Just, hey.
You had a budget of what? $20,000 a month?
Oh,
not relevant to mention. Not relevant.
I mean, exactly. So but you have, when you go back, but McVicker, the thing I found on McVicker was that he had basically set up various meetings with Oswald for the press that just were facilitated by Snyder. And then you find out one of the things I was able to prove a couple years back that I presented at a Lancer was that Priscilla Johnson McMillan had a contract with the CIA.
There's another one.
So how many people do we need to surround these two? Yeah, she moved in with Morena later on and wrote that scathing book that attacked Oswald.
Yeah.
While still in communication with the CIA.
Yeah.
So it would not surprise me if Martin, either on the FBI or the CIA or another agency's impetus, was sent to monitor her. Well, I mean, he got the bonus of, as you might have gone over in the show already, becoming quite familiar with Mrs. Oswald.
Yes. And financially too. So you have to.
Yeah.
They had a joint bank account, right? Or was it a postal office? Either way.
That was the post office box.
Yeah. So donations were arriving to Ruth Payne's house, naturally. And I came across a document. Guess who she delivered them to? Rob knows. John Martin Thorne, who was Marina's lawyer. And, me and Carmine are fellow paisans. And we know that there's some type of skim going on with these cash donations, and with I found a document. $68,000 was in a bank account named to Marina that the Martins were unable to touch. That's times 10 in purchasing power today. $680,000, right?
Oh, and that's just what we know about.
That's what all of without the skim.
Cash.
Without the skim.
Yeah, but I mean, the in-cash donation she'd get from members of the public. Morena made a lot of money, plus the book deal.
Yeah, and she would
plus all of the press
on
interviews
the floor and be like stupid Americans. But
she certainly, I mean, it's people. Once again, the heartstrings. I understand she went through a lot. She was a young mother. I understand that she had a lot going on, but one can also, two things can be true at the same time. She can be a young mother whose husband tragically died, and at the same time be an opportunist who is being manipulated by the government unknowingly.
Right. Yeah. At some point,
the sad truth of it is then she's working at the 7-Eleven in 1971. Or was it by 1969 she was working at 7-Eleven? I don't know. I can't remember.
Which is crazy with the amount of money that must have changed hands. In that
Right.
I mean, I understand why she changed business managers, because either Martin or Declan Ford or someone must have embezzled so much money.
Oh, yeah.
Got to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Declan Ford is a very interesting character. It's funny you mention him. I've came across him a lot in my research in the aftermath. Marina trusted him and his wife Catherine more than anyone.
And she seems to always be looking for a sponsor, like someone to protect her.
Right.
You know, maybe Oswald, that was maybe
somebody she could trust.
Yeah, she just wanted, like, Oswald was her ticket out of the Soviet Union, you know, her chance to get to America. And then when he was gone, she needed a new sponsor. So she found a man, married or not,
yeah,
deals with them, and tried to promote her own interests. You know, I'm not gonna judge her for. I think, you know, hey, judge people however you want, but I do think it might have been a little early. You could have waited 6 months after.
He's not even cold in the ground yet.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
You could have waited 6 months. I'm just saying.
But to your point, Carmine, and like it both can be true. You can be a grieving widow and be like, I'm sorry, Lee, I have to do this for our children. I have to take advantage of this. I have to make money. I have to do whatever. And, you know, it both could be true.
Yeah.
But you can't be loyal to someone in 6 feet under when you're worried about your children's future and you're worried about being deported or possibly imprisoned, right? As an accomplice.
Yeah, her actions are not, I think, what makes, to me, the questionable things about Marina are, one, the disloyalty to Oswald so quickly with so many different people is one thing. But let's put that aside. That can be always just, you know, asserted as a moral judgment. I'm trying to morally judge her. I'm just trying to say, I think that shows to how loyal she was. I don't think she was very loyal to anybody. I think she might have said she was loyal to some people, but I don't think Marina was very loyal to anyone but Marina. And that, I think, is revealed by her testimony, which you can see there's different versions of. In one version of the testimony, she wakes up with Oswald, she makes breakfast, he eats and leaves. In another version, she's asleep, and when she wakes up, he's gone. And that's just one.
With the wedding ring left.
Yeah, yeah. That's just one.
And then you got the backyard photographs and this and that.
Yeah,
so
there's too many inconsistencies. Even what's funny is the commission, for as much as they relied on what she said in various times, quietly was saying that she was a liar, and they actually had people that wanted to bring her up to impeach her statements, but that would have damaged the commission, so they didn't. But Norman Redlick was his name, was the guy in the commission who said she was a liar and that she has to be brought back to, you know, fix all these holes in her story.
Scott, to answer your question, where are the documents and tapes of this Marina surveillance? I wish we had the tapes, but we got the documents over at Locals. You can look at the James Herbert Martin show files, and they're all in there for you to peruse.
Yep. And we'll add some more for this show too.
Yeah, beyond the people we've already mentioned, I can confirm that, they were monitoring her before. They certainly were monitoring her after, because those agencies wanted her, and I don't think she ever would have, because I don't think it was true, but they wanted her to say the Russians did it.
Yeah.
Cubans did it. They told Lee to do it. Because if they could get that allows them to go and attack, you know, gives them all the reasoning they need.
Yeah.
Jason, where are the 2 Oswald daughters these days? Well, one I've heard was a successful real estate agent, June. And then she kind of dropped out of sight in the 90s after coming forward. And Rachel, I'm not sure. I know she was working at a bar in the early 90s, waitressing. And after that, she kind of dropped out of sight. I'm sure they're using not their real names. But there are articles out there. There's a couple videos on YouTube if you want to search them out. Interviews with June and Rachel, for sure. And then Scott, with the comment of the day, perhaps the 7-Eleven connection is the big gulp. That's she, or was it she was definitely slurping James Herbert Martin?
Oh man.
Oh.
The LCD.
You're worse than me when I joke to you privately, Rob.
Well, and Marina, as we know, is still around. And years back, you know, someone that I was in contact with was talking about if I wanted to ask her some questions, but she doesn't do interviews without being paid.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested.
Yeah.
If you don't have something to say for the historical record that's important for free, then good luck. Paid interviews, in my opinion, can't be trusted. There's a reason why they're saying what they're saying. They're getting paid.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just to give a little tease here, I might have been texting with the son of a Martin that we have referred to in this episode, and hope to gain some context from
And have him on the show in the future.
possibly.
If we can twist his arm hard enough.
Yes. I'm not going to say any more than that, but I've never seen
All
a
right.
statement for him.
Put your nipple away, Joe. Stop teasing. Put your nipple away. Okay.
It would be interesting. So the point is, we are the people that are trying to move this case forward. We are debunking myths. We are going off of documents, and we are serious researchers. And I'm so glad to have Carmine as a new friend, being on twice in a week, and together. And yeah, I'll let you close it out, Rob, if you want.
Carmine, tell everybody where they can find you and all your work, sir, again, in case they missed it the first time.
You can find my work and research, blog, and updates at tpaak.com, tpaak.com. I finally, after a decade of people telling me to, put up a donate button. So if you'd like, I'd appreciate it. But one of the things, if you look at my site, I don't use ads. I don't have a paywall. I want people to get to this information. So that's the way that we raise money, and that's the only way, because sponsors, especially, I mean, could you imagine certain people like books, some of the bad books that come out? I just don't want to rely on that. So donations only. I don't, I want it to be, I think that's why, what's kind of funny, years ago, you'd have never thought it, Rob, when we first started out, but now when you type certain things or certain figures in the JFK case, your podcast and my website are usually in the top 5 results.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
I know, it's finally making some impact. It only took a decade.
Well, I was telling Joe, it was like I went all these years, okay, without having the words JFK or assassination in the title of my podcast, which is a dumb move 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So unless you go deeper, like if you were to search JFK assassination podcast, mine does not come up. Yeah. Now it does, because I've adjusted some things, and I included on the Spreaker feed, and we had to manipulate the algorithm here a little bit and call it JFK investigation. YouTube doesn't have a problem with that, but they do with the A word. So. It's crazy when you Google something and you see the results pop up and you're like, hey, that's Carmine. That's his picture.
And I also like that hopefully it's not just, those of us in the community, but the average member of the public that is coming across those, and they actually get to see some. Hopefully we're saving them time. Hopefully they're not going to buy one of those nonsense books, and they're going to instead spend the money on, maybe checking out a show like this, or joining the Mary Farrell Foundation, or doing some of their own research with documents. I mean, that's really what I hope for. I'm hoping eventually we'll have enough people looking at it to finally we can collectively put enough of the pieces together that we can have, if not the final answer, the best answer, with the best material. And
folks out there, if you just Google JFK myths, you will find a lot of radio shows that we did many years ago, busting all these myths. And I'm sure Carmine has articles all over his website.
If you go to my author, I have articles, but if you go to my author page, I actually have the JFK myths collection.
There you go.
There's a page with 16 episodes.
Easy to find.
The 17th with me and Joe and Chuck and Mike is now at the top of my appearances. So,
so any questions you have about any questionable stories from people like James Biles, Beverly Oliver, Judy Baker, people like this that have these great stories but no substance, head over to Carmine's blog because he does an excellent job of laying it out in very easy to understand terms. And I'm so happy to have him back on the show. It's been far too long, Carmine. We must do it much sooner than the last time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
You know, I love having you on. You're a great guy. Happy to call you a friend, and I deeply respect you as a researcher. And I think you're one of the smartest ones out there. You have a good brain for this stuff, and we appreciate you coming on the show again, my friend.
Oh, I'm always happy to come back, guys. It's always been a pleasure, Rob, and now getting to meet Joe and come back has been great. And I hope people have found everything useful, and that check out the notes, check out. I've always told people, and back in the old shows and today, check out the files for yourself. When we post them, when other people post them, if somebody doesn't want to give you evidence, there's a reason. It's probably not reliable.
Yep. Amen. All right. Well, for Joe Borelli, Joey Scars, and Carmine Savastano, thank you, folks, for stopping in for another live episode of the Lone Gunman Podcast. It's been real. We've had our most live viewers ever here tonight, and it's because Carmine's here. Don't kid yourself, folks. Yes. He is the man, and we know it. So thank you, folks, for stopping by. Great interaction. And follow the links down below for more intriguing commentary and information. We are out. Peace.